Hey folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado Tony.
And Psychic Tom has it on the job tonight. Red hot, glowing crystal ball.
We did pretty good last week, Tom. We both did predict that Curtis Blaydes was going to win, but we also both said in no uncertain terms that, I think I pretty much said within the first two rounds, if Blaydes is going to have a chance, that's when it's going to happen, knockout. And sure enough, even though we hedged our bets, we pretty much described exactly how it happened, because if it wasn't for that knockout shot, Curtis Blaydes was cruising towards doing damage and winning that fight on technical
you got
ability
it
alone.
That was one of the most perfectly timed uppercuts.
Yeah.
And the way he set that up, it was just flawless.
Yeah,
And,
sort of. It obviously didn't happen as quickly, but it sort of was like, Ben Askren shooting for the takedown and Jorge Masvidal hitting him with the flying knee. It was just the moment happened.
It was a good lesson. It was a good lesson because it just seemed like Blaydes was obsessed with the takedown, and he was just didn't see it coming. Sometimes you have to shoot in and try to keep one eye going up a little bit, and it's just a picture perfect. What do you think about the extra punch land?
Oh, see, that was the only part of the fight I actually saw, because it was memed so much. Because I didn't actually watch this whole card. I was having a problem with the feed, and then I just said, screw it, I'll watch it later, but I didn't end up watching it later. But they did have, GIFs of how long it took Herb Dean to get over there. And a lot of people were like, well, what the hell is he doing so far away in the first place, But he's... Lewis, when he gets in that mode, how can you slow him down if, you're not right on top of the action? And those are big guys, So it's not like, one or two punches from the featherweight lands, even though they can still throw hard. It's such damaging blows, so not very good for Herb Dean's repertoire. He's usually got a better reputation than that for being right on top of the action. But lesson learned there, too. Get on there. But yeah, not a very effective rescue there. And then I actually did end up winning money. I did the FanDuel thing, but I still ended up picking a loser. So it was Draco Rodriguez. I went for the $8 pick on one card, and then I went with Caitlin Vieira over Yana Kunitskaya against my better judgment. These Russian fighters are just so damn unpredictable sometimes, and some of them can be so dominating, but I just didn't. I looked at Caitlin Vieira's record, undefeated, and obviously didn't think it was this was going to be a fight that was going to stop her, but she won by unanimous decision. Kunitskaya there, and my backup $8 pick was going to be Andrei Arlovsky, who lost by a rear naked choke, so that would have been worse. That might have taken me out of the winnings. I was smart enough to pick Derek Minner over Charles Rosa, even though Rosa was a Boston guy. He had all of his fights in the Boston area. Then Chris Daukaus over Alexei Olenek. I think I did pick him. That was a quick knockout, too, so that scored me some points. Phil Hawes, I was also big on. He ended up getting a majority decision, which is not that great for points, but it's better than a loss. And then, as I said, Arlovsky went down. He lost to Tom Aspinall by rear naked choke 1 minute and 9 seconds into the second round. And then I picked another. I had two different cards. So I had Blaydes in the main event, MVP slot on one. And then I had Derek Lewis in the MVP slot on the other one. So obviously the one that I won on was the Derek Lewis one. So on one card I had Danny Chavez, and he lost. But I didn't pick Jared on the other card. And then there was John Castaneda. He got a TKO. He would have been a good one to pick, but I didn't pick him on either card over Eddie Wineland. That was just 4 minutes and 44 seconds into the action. Julian Erosa over Nate Landwehr by flying knee. Quickest knockout of the night, just 56 seconds into that contest. And that one wasn't on my radar. Casey O'Neill was one I was going to pick. I was like, she looks good. The matchup looks good. Shanna Dobson's not really crazy talented there, and doesn't have that much of a record. And O'Neill had a better one. So that should have been a no-brainer for me. I should have went with it because usually I always pick one female fight, and usually there's always one female fight that is in the mix. But this time I just ignored it because I just figured these other guys were going to be better chances. But no, I didn't do that good on that one.
You got to wonder how many fights will Arlovsky have left in the UFC. You got to wonder, and I mean, God damn, he's just on a bad roll. I mean, nothing to be ashamed of. He's been around more than 20 years. I remember, I think he first came back in the late 90s, if I remember right.
Aspinall is one of those fighters. He doesn't look tough. He looks like he's been sitting on the couch for a while. But he fights like a madman. And he's impressed me a lot. I don't know if he's ever going to be in title contention, be that good, but that's a lot of fights in a row going back to his smaller league days, the feeder leagues. This is his third in the UFC. He beat Jake Collier in 2020, July. And in October, he beat Alan Baudot, both by TKOs. And then this one by submission against Andre. So he's actually got, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fight stoppage streak going. And before that, his loss that would have maybe continued that streak instead of breaking it was for illegal downward elbows, John Jones style, a disqualification. So if you look at that, his only real loss is an early one back in 2015 by a heel hook submission. 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And every other fight has been a stoppage win. So I should have jumped all over that one, but I didn't. He was very expensive though, so that was probably one of my reasons for not picking him. Anyway, we got a big one coming up this weekend. UFC 186, Rosenstrok versus Gagne. And this is a tough one to pick. I've seen Gagne fight once, but Rosenstrok, you never know which guy's going to show up. Is it going to be the guy that knocks you out at the last possible second and does nothing for the rest of the fight? Or is it going to be the guy who just mows through people? Gagne being undefeated, Rosenstrok has the one loss. It's definitely going to be interesting. It's a good match on paper for sure. And we have Nikita Krillov, 27-7 against Magomed Ankalaev, 14-1 in the co-main event. Obviously, you got one guy with a little bit more experience, the other guy with better winning percentage. That's another tough one to pick. I don't know. I personally would go with the guys with the experience here. Rosenstrok's got 4 more wins than Gagne, although he does have the one loss. I'd definitely go with him in the main event. I don't count out Gagne's chances, but just got to go with the horse with more experience there than Nikita Krillov over Magomed Ankalaev. I'd say the same thing. I mean, 27 fights. That's a lot more. 27 wins, as opposed to 14. And there's that one loss, but he might take a second one here. I don't know much about Magomed, but I've definitely seen Krillov fight. Pretty good. And we have Montana De La Rosa, 11-6, fighting Myra Bueno Silva, who's 7-1. Pedro Munhoz, 18-5, fighting Jimmy Rivera, who's 23-4. Well, fights between those two, too. Jeez. It's going to be a tough one. Angela Hill back in action. She's 12-9. I believe her last fight was postponed due to COVID issues. Canceled. Ashley Yoder is her opponent, 8-6. And we got Bruce Leroy on the card. Alex Caceres, 17-12, fighting Kevin Kroom, 21-12. So somebody's 12's gonna get expanded.
I never heard that. That's good. That's good.
Alexander Hernandez and Thiago Moses in the fifth fight of the night. Moises, I should say. 14-4 for Moises and 12-3 for Hernandez. And then I don't know why he's so far down the card. I guess maybe because he's probably main eventing the preliminaries here. But the fourth fight of the night is Alex Oliveira, who's 22-9 with one draw, fighting Ramazan Kurmagomedov, and he is 8-0. So his O might have to go if Alex is in form. He's been up and down. And then Alexis Davis, 19-10, fighting Sabina Mazo, who's 9-1. And second fight of the night, Vince Cachero, 7-3, fighting Ronnie Lawrence, who's 6-1. And boy, this guy's got a lot of fights. First fight of the night, Maxim Grishin, who is 31-8-2. 41 total fights. That's not even including no contests, if he has any. He's fighting Dustin Jacoby, who's 13-5. That might be the mismatch of the week. No, he's not really that bad. 13-5, but that's an experience factor. Squared right there. Okay, so what else we got? We got some Rocky stories to talk about. Tony's got one, and I got one.
So, Tom, did you hear the news? We got a new Rocky movie coming out?
No.
Yep, a new Rocky movie, which happens to be an old Rocky movie. Sylvester Stallone, on the 35th anniversary, is making Rocky 4. I saw some of the one of the YouTube videos he did. I had heard a rumor about it. So the one YouTube video where he was showing like some of the scenes that he's redoing, where he's actually doing more of the Drago Apollo Creed fight. Creed actually goes down, and then you see him like struggling to get up off the canvas, and then eventually, obviously, gets killed. And then they do like, because they show in the movie where like Shin refuses to sanction this fight, and in the original trailer you see like a second clip where they're like, this guy's had one fight and one man's dead. But they show more of that scene now where like they're like, we're not going to sanction this fight. He's never had a professional fight. He had an exhibition which was, it backfired. And Rocky's like, you're saying basically you don't think I can beat this guy. So they're redoing it. They have Drago talking more in this one. It should come out in November. He's working on the editing as we speak. You even see him in the studio with his mask on doing it, which I thought was cool, Hey, and my one friend was like, they're taking the robot out of it? I'm like, yeah, they're taking, Paulie's basically, friend out of it. Yes, they are. He's like, why would you mess with perfection like that? I'm like, easy answer. It's going to make a lot of money. It's going to make a shit ton of money.
Well, Rocky, the real guy, Rocky Marciano, is also in the news because pretty soon now you're going to be able to play him in a video game on Xbox One, Xbox One Series SX, PS4, and PS5. This is a game called Esports Boxing Club. And you go to a pretty simple website, no dash or anything, esportsboxingclub.com. You can see who else is going to be in it. First line of fighters they have on the screen: Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano, and Joe Louis. And they're in the Legends category, it looks like. We also have Jack Johnson, Arturo Gatti, Jack Dempsey, Floyd Patterson, Josh Taylor. Mickey Ward, Alexander.
Josh Taylor's on.
Josh Taylor's who?
I think Josh Taylor's currently still fighting.
Frank Bruno.
So this is kind of sounds like similar to the EA Sports. They used to be called like Champion or EA Sports like Fighting, they were called. Because these were for back in the day, the PlayStation. When I say PlayStation, I mean the original PlayStation, the PlayStation without any numbers behind it. Because I had the one for the original PlayStation.
Why don't you tell us how old you are, Tony?
What?
Why don't you tell us how old you are?
Yeah, I know. Oh, dude. I actually remember the Genesis. I remember playing John Madden before they put the years on it. It was just John Madden football.
How about Tecmo Bowl on Nintendo?
I played Tecmo Bowl for Nintendo. Yes, I did. I played the Atari single screen. You know, but I'll tell you the first boxing game I really ever had was a mistake. Wasn't a mistake. It was a mistake on who was featured in the game. There used to be an arcade boxing game back in like the late 80s. I remember playing it one time in the arcade. It wasn't that good of a game, but it's got real muscle bound. And trust me, I don't remember what it was called. But they were going to, Sega Genesis was going to make a version of it with Tyson. Well, fate intertwined, and Mike Tyson got removed from the game, and it became Buster Douglas boxing. So if you Google Sega Genesis Buster Douglas boxing, and you can see the screenshots of this. I mean, it was fun for what it was. And then had the Evander Holyfield boxing that came out. Then they had a Legends boxing with Holyfield, Frazier, Marciano, MC Patterson, Holmes, Ali, and Holyfield, obviously. And then, like I said, when then the EA Sports came, Genesis, and they had like the Fight Night, and they had Fight Night Round 2, but they had a lot of the legends on there as well. Marciano was on there. Weight classes. So you had like middleweights with like you had your Sugar Ray Robinsons, your Jake LaMotta's. You had your Oscar De La Hoyas. I think the one was actually called Oscar De La Hoya boxing. You had your De La Hoyas on there. Then you had your Marcianos, your Ollie's. I'll have to look up some of the old clips on some of them and send them to you guys. And then I had gotten away from all the video boxing games. When I got PS3 a couple years ago, I got the one game because Vinny Paz was on. I'm like, I always wanted to play a game with Vinny Paz. But the controls were so hard and so confusing. The first fight I ever played, I was trying to hit a button to punch. I was throwing headbutts. I got disqualified in like 45 seconds in the first round. I'm like, I played it. It just was, it wasn't as, it wasn't easy to control for me.
We had the funniest game in high school. My dad found it and bought it for the PC. It was called Low Blow. It was a boxing game where you were supposed to land low blows.
I remember that game.
It was hilarious.
I never played it.
There was this one move where the guy would like wiggle his hips and then end up landing like a back kick to the nuts. And you had to wait for the referee to not look so you wouldn't get charged. But oh man, it was like 3 low blows and then you land the knockout punch.
Like I said, I remember it.
Well, on this game with Rocky Marciano, we've also got a lot of interesting players here. Shane Mosley Jr. is on here. We got some female fighters.
Wow.
Tommy Morrison makes the list. Ricky Hatton. Enzo Maccarinelli. He's not that famous, but he's on there.
I remember him, but
just adding all the time. So that should be a good game when it comes out. One championship here now. Back to mixed martial arts. They're in the news. I've been watching a lot of CNBC, as you know, from we're talking about all the Bitcoin stuff. But they've also been talking about on CNBC this thing called a SPAC. This is such a new hip thing in stocks now that they even have some guy who put out a rap about SPACs. And it's an acronym for Special Acquisition Companies. Now, One Championship is exploring an option to talk with some of these SPACs to become a publicly traded company. And obviously, they're probably the closest to the UFC as far as revenue. They're $1 billion company. Which I don't know if you can say that about Bellator. I mean, maybe they are, but I don't know. I don't know enough about the numbers. And I know One Championship had reports out last year that it had eclipsed $1 billion company. So, anyway, they're based in Singapore, but they're enlisting Credit Suisse and Goldman Sachs to prepare for a possible listing. And they've already talked preliminarily with several unidentified SPACs. And they've personally declined to comment on the report that came out about this in Bloomberg. But they could also raise capital through a traditional IPO or through further private investment. So they're not worried about doing this for income, so to speak. I think it's more for just backing, to have that backing. Because if you remember the UFC buyout, that isn't just the guy that's the cousin of Rahm Emanuel there, Ari Emanuel. That's not just him. There's a whole big ownership group now that's backing it, and a lot of them are Wall Street people. Michael Dell from Dell Computers is involved, and there's some other people involved in computer investments. There's like a whole, I don't know what you call it, like not really a hedge fund, but there's like a whole fund, I believe, of some kind that's invested. So it's a lot of different conglomerates, and this would kind of structure One Championship a little bit more like that, if it doesn't go to a straight up IPO, which would be interesting. That'd be something I'd love to invest in. It's definitely seems to be growing. It's gotten a US, or not a UFC, but a USA deal, I should say, to be on US TV now. So I think it's something worth watching for sure. And we got some sad news, some sad sort of sordid news about a guy we had always talked about getting on the show, but I never actually followed through in doing it. But now it's probably not a good idea. He might not be on any shows for a long time if he ever was on one. But Travis Fulton, we've talked about him because he's one of the most prolific, as in fight amounts, fighters in the world. He's fought hundreds of times in MMA. I don't know what it is. Last check, even on SureDog, they probably don't have it right, but I believe on SureDog he's over 300 in the fight column. But he's also a boxer as well. So he does MMA and boxing. So his most recent boxing match was probably more recent than his most recent MMA fight. But anyway, he was indicted on Wednesday on 3 counts: sexual exploitation of a child, possession of child pornography, and receipt of child pornography. And just in case you thought maybe it was, an instance of statutory rape or 16-year-old or something like that, no. It's all for a minor under 12 years old. Pretty sick stuff.
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
So, this happened supposedly in November 2020. And that's going to be a tough thing to get over for him. That's going to be the fight of his life. He's had a lot of fights, but this one is going to be the one to put him down for good. Might be doing a lot of fighting in prison for a while. I believe it came out today that he waived his hearing on pretrial detention, so he's going to be stuck in the clink for a long time. Nobody's bailing him out. And with the COVID situation, who knows when they're going to have time for a trial. But with this kind of situation, you probably want to keep yourself out of the news as much as possible and just go with a plea agreement. He's 43 years old. This article says he holds the MMA record for career professional fights with 320. But, yeah, I don't think that's accurate. Nicknamed the Ironman for that purpose, for that reason. But he actually fought in the UFC, which is something I never knew. I mean, you'd probably have to wait quite a while through his record to find it. But according to this article, his record stands at 255, 54, and 10. And he was 1-1 in the UFC. Last fought in April 2019 on an M1 Global card in California. But I doubt that's the last time he fought in boxing. Probably more recent than that. So it is what it is. Here's our bad guy of the week. Now, speaking of legal matters, we have another story about another big lawsuit. This one's about WWE wrestlers and brain damage. And it's a case that's going to the Supreme Court now.
Wow.
A lawyer for these wrestlers filed a request late Wednesday asking the Supreme Court to hear appeals of lower court rulings that dismissed the lawsuits, saying they were filed after the statute of limitations expired. The WWE says the lawsuits are without merit and believes the appeals will not succeed. The plaintiffs include William Billy Jack Haynes, Big Russ McCullough,
Yep.
Ryan Sakota, Matthew Luther Raines Wise, and the wife of the late Nelson Viscera Frazier, also known as Big Daddy V, who died in 2014. And these guys are among more than 50 former wrestlers, most of them stars in the 80s and 90s, who sued the WWE, saying they suffered repeated head injuries, including concussions that led to long-term brain damage. They accused the WWE, based in Stamford, Connecticut, of knowing of the risks of head injuries but not warning its wrestlers. Several of the lawsuits were dismissed by a lower federal court in 2018. The other wrestlers who filed suit included Jimmy Superfly Snuka, who I believe is dead now.
Yeah, he passed away.
Joseph Road Warrior Animal Laurinaitis, Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, Chris King Kong Bundy Pallies, Harry Masayoshi Fujiwara, known as Mr. Fuji. Yeah, it says Snuka and Fujiwara died in 2017 and 2016, respectively, and were diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, after their deaths. I also remember Snuka was facing a possible murder trial. They reopened an investigation into a former girlfriend's death right before he died.
Yeah, you know what? It's crazy because like you know, you grow up like watching, and they always portray like the good guys are the good guys, the bad guys are the bad guys. But outside the ring, that wasn't always true. Like some of like the guys that were like the baddest bad guys out there, mean, whatever, were really nice guys. And then sometimes the guys that were the fan favorites and the good guys were really rotten, horrible human beings outside the ring. And a friend of mine hates Jimmy Snuka to this day, even though he's passed away. When he died, he was like, fuck, who cares? Because when he was young, pre-adolescent, they were at a whatever, and he went up to meet Snuka, and it was so nasty to him. I mean, he basically, like, in a way, traumatized him. He hated him, to the day he died. Other guys, like King Kong Bundy, who was since passed away 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years this week, actually. When I met him in 2018, when I was a kid, he was scary. He was big, and he was rough. He was a bad guy. He hurt people. He put guys like Hulk Hogan in the hospital. He was a scary guy. Even on shows like Married with Children and watch him in interviews, you're like, oh, he was actually really kind of funny, and you got like, you almost became like less afraid of him as you got older. When I finally got to meet him a year before he passed, I was going to let you know, as a child, I was afraid of you. And he laughed, and I was like, he goes, and he went to give the thumbs up. I said, no. I said, may I ask if we hold up our hands to do the 5 count? He's like, of course. And I'm like, well then, it was like Philly's game, and I was in costume. They were having wrestling matches after the game. He wished me luck in the wrestling matches. I said, I'm not a wrestler. I'm just a guy here to drink and make an ass. But you're right. Like a lot of those guys you mentioned on there, why are they at the WWE? Easy answer. Because it's still viable, and it's still worth a lot of money. A lot of these guys that maybe for years in other organizations like the NWA, which became WCW, is shut down. The AWA is gone. A lot of these small regional promotions down in Texas, North Carolina, Florida, so on and so forth, are not operating anymore. So, if you take a guy, and I'm just going to use a name, King Kong Bundy. King Kong Bundy wrestled down in Texas. He wrestled in Memphis. And then he made his name in WWE. Now, he had wrestled for, say about 6-7 years before he made the WWE. Wrestled in the WWE from, 85 to 88, and then maybe in 1995 to 96. He only wrestled for them maybe years out of a 15-year career.
Yeah.
Well, why was he still in the WWE before he died? Because they were still operation. You can't really sue somebody that doesn't exist.
Well, we know how
anymore.
Tony would rule if he was the judge on this case.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like, and the thing is, wrestling's a physical sport. Okay, you can say it's all fake and this and that, and it's all pre-planned. But here's the thing. Gravity is gravity. If you're going to jump off of a rope, you're going to land on the ground. Yeah, the ground might have some spring to it, but you're still landing at 300 to 400 pound body through air and landing on something. Your body's not made that way. If you're wrestling, you jump off a top rope and you land on somebody, or somebody lands on you. You can say, "Oh, it's fake." They practice that, yeah, but you're still having 200 some pounds on your chest and your head and your shoulders and all that. You're getting picked up. You're getting pile drivers. So it's a physical type of entertainment. That there are a lot of injuries. There's a prescription, drug problem in the sport because guys know. Example, our former guest, Diamond Dallas Page. Dallas told us almost 10 years ago he was making a lot of money when he hurt his back. And they were telling him, you might need spinal fusion. And he's like, no, because I'm making too much money to get spinal fusion right now. And that's when his wife said, maybe yoga. And he's like, yoga? I wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga. And she showed him one move. He goes, no. And that's when he developed his yoga program. And I watched an interview with him later. He said, yeah. He goes, my back is still jacked up. My spine is jacked up, but I strengthened the muscles around the spine.
Yeah.
So he was a guy that saw the negative and he made it a positive. Other guys didn't do that. They got the head injury. They mask it. They drink with it. They take the prescription medicine with it, and they actually make things worse.
Well, with the NFL, remember, when they sued for the brain injuries, there was also a suit that was pretty closely tied to it. It was maybe not in the same time period where the players were suing for, but they were suing because they had been given painkillers before matches and stuff and games. But in this lawsuit, in this article anyway, it says, unlike football and hockey, in which players have suffered similar injuries, WWE matches involve moves scripted and choreographed by the WWE, thus making the company directly responsible for wrestlers' injuries, which is what the lawsuit claims, is what they're saying, but not what they're stating as a fact.
Well, once again, from knowing guys that have been professional wrestlers and knowing guys and watching the sport, following the sport, for the most part, only really what gets scripted is the finish.
Right.
So, just for example, say The Undertaker is going to wrestle Triple H or Hulk Hogan or somebody. They're going to say, Undertaker is going to win this. using the tombstone pile driver, and he's going to pin Triple H 1, 2, 3. And then they're going to turn around and say, okay, now, like, a couple of guys are going to, okay, how are we going to set this match up? And they'll have, like, one of the backstage guys will sit in a room with them. They say, okay, you know, what would be entertaining? How about, you know, and they'll say, okay, Triple H, in the ring, you're going to call the match. So you might say, go to this spot. And that might be throw the Undertaker over the top, or, you know, slam him to a table spot. But for the most part, they'll get a couple spots, but they call things on the fly. And so they can't, Vince McMahon told me I have to do whatever. And especially over the last decade with all the chronic traumatic situations, they've actually lessened a lot with the chair shots and all that. So you're right, things that happened 20, 30, and 40 years ago are happening at that degree today.
But you make a good point in that, you know, these guys were wrestling long before they came to the WWE, and there's no evidence that you could find. It's just impossible to find evidence that would pinpoint that damage to only the time that they were with the WWE.
Right.
Especially when you consider guys have been with the WWE for such a short time compared to the rest of their careers. And as we probably all know, the lower leagues are probably a lot worse than the WWE because they don't have any standards. And it's happening in front of, like, a high school gym crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But this is just an interesting story because it puts the whole concussion issue back into the spotlight. And, you know, even though this case doesn't have really a chance, mostly because of the statute of limitations and, you know, the difficulty of the evidence, it's interesting because it got off the ground in the first place. And it went this far in the first place, and it got to the Supreme Court because, you know, here you have a situation where, like they said here in the article, it's scripted. But in the UFC, where I think a lawsuit is coming for brain injuries, it's coming within the next 5 years. I'm pretty much saying it's guaranteed to happen. And it's because not necessarily because of matchmaking or, you know, what fighters are told to do or anything like that. It's more to do with the bonus system. And they, you know, back in the day, they also had, I don't know if it's actually still a thing, but they used to also have locker room bonuses, they called them, where Lorenzo Fertitta would just come into the locker room and start writing checks, literally, based on performance, you know. And if you really break it down, you can make the argument. You can make a very sound legal argument that some of these guys who fought their whole careers in the UFC were fighting under a system that rewarded reckless behavior in the ring, to the point where you knew you were going to get more money and more reward and more career opportunities if you knocked a guy out or you stopped him. And, you know, some people might argue that could happen in any league. That could happen in any sport. And nobody would bat an eye at it. But this is a sport where, you know, if you fight recklessly, you have a chance to wreck yourself, basically, by fighting that way. And, you know, if it can be proven that the UFC managed its fighters in such a way as to reward extreme risk-taking that caused concussions, then you have a real suit that could have legs. The problem is, I don't know if any lawyer is smart enough to figure out how to do it with independent contractors. And the firm that's suing the UFC now over antitrust issues, that's been a concerted effort between multiple law firms, and it's gone on like, almost 4 years, I want to say now, maybe even longer. I have to look that up. I haven't checked in on that in a while. I know it was coming down to the finer points before a trial last time I checked on it. But anyway, the point being, you know, if these guys can get off the ground with something that's obviously going to fail due to statute of limitations, which is I don't know why it's been able to get this far without. Usually that's a slam dunk, kick the case out. The statute of limitations is up. It's like one of the king technicalities of all. But for some reason, this one got through all the hoops and is now possibly headed towards the Supreme Court. And I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I mean, for a weak case to get this far, point being, somebody ought to be able to come up with something for the UFC. And if they're reading this and figuring out, well, all I got to worry about is the statute of limitations and I can get mine off the ground, then might happen sooner than we think. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Now, we had a story we talked about a little while ago. A guy named Otman Izatar. He was released from the UFC for violating COVID-19 protocols. Now he's going to receive a second chance. This was the case where he got his friends into the venue, and one of them was climbing down a drain pipe to get into the place. But he's going to get another chance. He says, when he cut him, Dana said, it's bad, he's gone, he's no longer a UFC fighter. That was at UFC 257, January 23rd. And it was on the day of the weigh-ins that Dana canceled the fight, because he helped people get in. But for some reason, he's going to give him an opportunity. He's going to receive a second chance. There's no further details on it. It just says Dana's going to give him a second chance. So maybe that was because of a threatened lawsuit. Who knows? Adrian Broner, we talked about him last week. The problem, he had not much of a problem getting a unanimous decision win over Giovanni Santiago. His uppercut was working particularly well. I saw like a snippet of it, like 5 minutes of it. I really wasn't.
Okay, because he definitely had a problem getting unanimous decision, and only the three blind mice of the judges was, his saving grace. I never liked the guy, and sometimes it's hard when you watch him because you go in there with a preconceived notion that here is a human being that you do not like personally or professionally. About billions. I think he's more about buffoonery. His biggest best weapon is his mouth. But he went in there, and the first thing he did was he said, I'm not making weight. He just came out and said, I'm not fighting at 147. The contract at 140, but because we're in the bubble, it's hard for me to make weight. That's bullshit. Everybody else has got to do it. One piece of fucking fish. So he says, okay, I'm not making the weight. So the first round, if any of the judges gave him the first round, they ought to be fired immediately, because I don't know how much damage. 0 punches he landed. 0. Can't win around if you land no punches, right? I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist. I caught it. I was watching the fights on ESPN, which were a much higher quality all around, which I want to get to in a minute. So when I turned it on, it was about the third or fourth round, and he'd already pretty much been down on the cards by then, getting outworked, outlanded, outpunched every round. Later in the fight, he did have a few episodes where maybe he landed a few punches or he got some counter punches in, but the fact of the matter is he got outworked.
207 to 98
he got
punches landed.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? A friend of mine commented on Facebook, says, you know what? He has to keep fighting because he has no money and he wants to stay relevant. About billions, right? About broke.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. So now it's like, okay, you want to keep fighting, but you're not an A-list fighter anymore. People that'll watch you fight are people that want to see you lose. But he's going to have to get a fight, and he's going to have to, and if he wants, great, because I got a perfect opponent for him. Boots Ennis out of Philadelphia. Boots Ennis would carve him like a Thanksgiving turkey it would be over in 5 rounds. And you know what? Maybe Broner would finally go away. Go away.
You know who does like Tony, did you watch the semi-main event? You know, the fight before with Wallin and Dominic Brazil?
Yes, sir.
You see that?
Yes, sir. And you know what? In the beginning of that fight, we were debating on how long we thought Brazil was going to last. Because, you know, Wallin was hitting him with some shots that looked really slow, and his legs didn't look sturdy. He looked like a fighter that should find another line of profession. But near the end of the fight, I mean, I really on any rounds, or if he did, maybe a round or two, but at least he was fighting back. He was landing a few punches, but once again, Wallin dominated the fight. The biggest knock against Wallin here is the fact that he could not take an opponent out who had a reputation of not having a great chin and who looked like he was, you know, 1 foot in the retirement. And the fact you didn't take him out is not a good sign.
Yeah, especially in the heavyweight division, because I watched it. Wallin's not unskilled. I mean, I liked his lateral movement. I mean, he fought smart. He had a good chin. Checked a lot of boxes, but he shouldn't skill, my opinion. He really should have closed the deal to get people talking about him a little more, to get him more excited. Yeah. I mean, this is the heavyweight division. And said that's, I mean, he's going to be around, but he didn't really make a big splash like, you know, like maybe he.
Right, I agree with you.
I'm just reading this article about the Broner fight. I gotta share some of his comments. He was interviewed after the fight, and he said, "I have to go home and assess my performance, but I didn't really warm up that much. Later on in the fight, I warmed up and started to feel good. I knew the motherfucker was going to be tough because he has that undefeated record. I knew he would fight like a homeless guy going for a sandwich. But I came in and I got the job done." That's not even the worst of it.
Wow, that's a that's high assessment of himself that he got the job done. Because I sure as hell didn't see him get any job done.
Yeah. Well, to his credit, the opponent did say that he needed to be a little bit more active towards the end of the fight. But, you know, that's just a guy being gracious. This is the worst of the worst for AB, though. He said, "It is a different AB. What happened was I only had $13 coming into this motherfucking fight. We done flipped it to about $13 million, so a lot of things are going to change. I'm not going to lie. For the rest of the weekend, we are going to flip bottles and have sex, but I'll be back to the gym after this weekend." Nutcase.
Wow. That guy, you know what? Now, we were talking about chronic traumatic brain injuries earlier. This guy ought to be checked for one.
Yeah.
Because I've never really seen him take a bad beating in a fight, mainly because he's so defensive and tries to hit, which, hey, that's great if you're excited. If you're like Pernell Whitaker or Willie Pep or even Floyd Mayweather, when you can go out there and stand in front of a guy and not, but there's an artistic, you know, an artistry to it, that's fine. I can appreciate you. When you're there and you're covering up, like Maidana really smacked him around pretty good. But like his fights with like Danny Garcia and Mikey Garcia that he lost, well, Manny Pacquiao that he lost. Well, he thought he won the Pacquiao fight. You know, his own mother shouldn't even have given him that fight because he got smacked around so bad. But you know, a lot of those fights, he's so defensive that, you know, he doesn't take a lot of punishment, but he also does nothing to win a fight. Like, if I go out there and stand there for, you know, 3 rounds or 5 rounds or 6 rounds or whatever the fight is, and don't throw hands, you're going to win. You might not hit me clean, but you still outwork me, you don't win. And you're not entertaining to watch.
Yeah, he's only entertaining when he gets beat up. Then it's entertaining.
Exactly.
Really?
But, you know, like I was a fan of, you know, Hector Camacho Sr. Because a lot of his big time fights, you know, after he got stunned real bad in that fight with Chapo, what was his name? I remember him, right, Tom?
I always have trouble thinking of his name. Big puncher. And
I want to say Edwin Rodriguez, and I know that's not right. But we'll figure that out. But as soon as Camacho got the first time ever, he became such a safety-first fighter that, his fight against Boom Boom Mancini, which I still think, he ran. Like, he literally got jets, in his boots, and he skirted around that ring, and I'm like, how does he find this guy entertaining, for one? He's mouthy, and he, dances, and he wears goofy outfits. Kind of sounds like me, but at a Phillies game. But his fighting style is not entertaining at all. He's like safety first runner, and then when he finally stepped up there and he was fighting Julio Cesar Chavez, and Chavez started to beat down round one, and Camacho just clinched. De La Hoya gave him a beat down, clinch. Trinidad gave him a beat down, clinch. He was a guy you could never knock out, because if he wasn't running, he was clinching.
Rosario, Edwin Rosario.
Yeah, I kept thinking Rodriguez. I know that's not right.
Yeah. He could bang. I remember.
Whether he won or lost, you were getting a good fight. Yeah, you know what? Before we get on to the next fight, I found him for my dad, and he's like right now like a kid in a candy shop. Because like this week he's been working out really hard, trying to work with his Parkinson's and everything. But he has the Parkinson's and the Crohn's, so he's getting from two different angles, and he's been working out really hard, really pushing himself. Well, this week he has been going well, and so he was like, man, he's really tired, I'm really lethargic, and letting himself get dehydrated because he's been sleeping a lot. And so yesterday I had him, sitting down, trying to relax. I was, really trying to get him pumped up with the hydration and the water and the Gatorades and all. I'm like, keep your ass down on the couch. But I didn't want him sleeping a whole lot either, because I wanted him awake and a little bit alert. So I'm showing him how to YouTube on the TV. So you got the big 65-inch TV with the app to get onto YouTube on there. And I said, let me do something. And I pulled them up 3 or 4. I would say they were high-quality fights. I'm sure Tom's going to remember all 3 of them as soon as I met. One fighter is a constant. It was 3 of his fights. Matthew Saab Muhammad out of Philadelphia. I pulled up both of his fights with Johnson and his second fight with Yaki Lopez. And my dad was like, man, these bringing back great memories. And it was like, man, like sitting back and Saturday afternoon fights on the CBS, and he goes, man, I haven't seen these fights in years. I'm like, will you give me a list of fights that you won? Because the majority I can find on YouTube. And you sit down, I'll pull them up for you. I was watching the one last week was Mancini Dooku Kim.
I just figured out like 2 months ago that you can actually just push a button on your phone and cast a YouTube video to your TV. As long as it's a digital TV, like a flat screen. Just hit this little button.
We have a TV, and it's a big adventure, but it's not a smart TV. So a couple of years ago,
but YouTube comes with cable now. There's a YouTube option with your cable channels now, for at least for Atlantic broadband. With mine, I get mine through that Roku a Fire Stick thing. Yeah.
So when I want to watch, say, a fight on DAZN like this weekend, I'll go on DAZN and I'll put in, I'll go to my Roku, I'll click DAZN. If I want to go on ESPN, I'll do that. So that's how I get on my Netflix and now YouTube. So we don't have a. Someone's like, do you have a smart TV? I'm like, I'm not even a smart person. So,
yes, you are.
Let's throw away this garbage Showtime card that was not entertaining, and let's talk about entertaining. Did you guys see the ESPN card?
I did not.
Yes. I caught. See, I was going back and forth between everything.
As you know from following my Facebook, I saw the last part of one of them.
Yeah, and I came under the ESPN card, in the 4th round. Yeah, what a war that was.
Burchelt and Valdez, right?
I mean,
is that the one you're talking about?
Burchelt was the favorite going in. I mean, he was one of the top pound-for-pound guys. And when I turned it on, I think it was the third round maybe, and they're like, oh my God, it was just the start of the fourth, just like you, Tom. You probably just did just what I did. You turned it on right after the Otto Wallin fight ended.
Yes.
Yeah. It was the fourth round. Turn on the fourth round, they're like, oh, on a shocking turn of events, Oscar Valdez is up 3-0 right now. It's like, oh wow, you're up 3-0. And I think it was the fourth round when he caught him high with that hook on the temple and really staggered Burchelt bad. And we're like, man, he's walking a drunk girl in heels. And he took some shots, and how he stayed up was amazing. And then finally, I think it was the fifth round when he finally went down for the first. But that knockout, I mean, wow. I mean, when he got hit, he walked right into that big left hook, which he'd been getting hit all night. And they said his Achilles heel is he's vulnerable to the hook to the temple, because he keeps his hands almost a peekaboo stance, but he's vulnerable from the bridge of the nose up. And that's where he was getting caught with that big left hook. It was like a radar. It was like zoning right in, like, boom, and just hitting him. And when he got hit with that last one, I mean, he went down in like slow motion and face down, not moving, and he was on the ground for a few minutes. I mean, it was a relief to see him get up.
Yeah.
That was a bad one. I got the ringside view. Somebody posted. I shared it to my Facebook page. So you got the view from his corner's perspective. They were celebrating pretty heavy. That was a good one. We also had Robert Easter Jr. beating Ryan Martin. We had Fedor Chudinov and Isaac Chilemba fight to a draw last Saturday. And David Avanesian over Josh Kelly. We talked about the Wallin beating of Brazil. Also, Zachary Ochoa losing to Juan Jose Velasco. And we got this weekend. Before we go to this Saturday's
Canelo
fights and Canelo, I want to do one quick story about UFC partnership with TikTok. I'm not really a big TikTok guy. I see the TikTok videos posted on Facebook. I'm still worried about that whole Trump thing where he wanted to ban it because it's got so many connections to China. And I used to have a Huawei phone too. And then I found out that Huawei is actually banned from the United States military and all kinds of other government offices because it's been proven that China actually hacked into all these phones. They have an access point that they can get into every single Huawei phone and intercept your messages and listen to your calls and all this. So the U.S. State Department completely banned all Huawei phones. And when I read that article, I just happened to have one. And I said, oh, geez, well, I better upgrade now. Get out of this. This is one of those track phone deals. It was a reconditioned phone. So TikTok supposedly is sort of the same thing. It's being monitored by the Chinese government, and they've been trying under the Trump presidency to get it to be owned by an American company. But I haven't read anything about any progress on that front, and they've probably forgotten about it now that Joe Biden's president. And he don't care. So now the UFC has such a presence.
The CFF, are you kidding me?
The UFC has such a presence on there. They already have 7 million followers across multiple platforms. Their channels include just regular UFC, UFC Russia, UFC Brazil, and UFC Europe. Collectively, they have 7 million followers, more than 7 million. Now they're going to actually corroborate with each other, and it's actually the first time that they've actually hired a dedicated full-time resource who will be focused on producing original live and video-on-demand content for the UFC channels on TikTok, and will actually work directly with the TikTok team to help grow the community across the world on TikTok. So this is actually a position that will be a joint participant with both companies. I don't know if they're going to get paid by both companies, but sounds like a good gig. Anyway, they're Director of Global Strategic Partnerships said, "We are thrilled to deepen our partnership with the UFC and launch a robust slate of exclusive live content for the TikTok community. Now more than ever, sports fans are craving the up-close and personal moments they are missing by not attending live events. Through this partnership, we are excited to bring TikTok the action and excitement of UFC, both inside and outside the octagon." So UFC's pretty happy as well about the deal, and it's basically going to be a couple weekly shows. It's going to be part of it. Live looks at weigh-ins, press conferences, athlete interviews, arena tours, fighter training segments, and all kinds of good stuff. So it's another reason to get into TikTok if you're not already. Just watch out for the Chinese spies. Alright, so upcoming weekend here, Saturday. Whoa, this is a crazy one. Sao Paulo, Brazil. We have a heavyweight matchup leading off this card. Got a lot of experience on one side of the tab here. Gonzalo Omar Basile. He is 75-14 at heavyweight, fighting Gilberto Mateus Domingos, who's 22-12. So I'm guessing the guy with 75 wins is the favorite fighter there. And we got our mismatch of the week in the co-main event. Isaac Rodriguez, a cruiserweight, 25-3, fighting the lowly Jonathan Santos de Souza, who's just 3-7. Only won one of his last 6 fights. Nuts. Not a good matchup at all. Alright. See what else we got on the agenda. Over in Germany, we got sort of an interesting card. We got William Skull at super middleweight. He's 15-0, fighting for the vacant IBO International Super Middleweight title against Gino Canters, who's 8-3-2. And we got somebody who's got to go in the co-main event here. Vincenzo Gualtieri, 15-0-1, fighting Sofian Kati, who's 10-0. That one's for the vacant IBO Continental Middleweight title. And another title on the line at Super Welterweight, 11-0, Haro Matavosian against Stefano Castellucci, who's 33-9. Matavosian is 11-0. That's for the vacant International Boxing Federation Intercontinental Super Welterweight title. Oh, that must be tough to fit on the belt. Especially if you had the vacant part. I don't think they put that on the belt. Alright, so then we go down to Kazakhstan. Has a fight on USA ESPN Plus on Saturday. Fights from Kazakhstan. They're not really that great either, according to record-wise. Anyway, lightweights Evgeny Smirnov, 13-1-3, fighting Nurtas Azbanov, who is 10-0, for the vacant WBC Asian Boxing Council Continental Lightweight title. Another mouthful there. And we got a cruiserweight fight between Server Emirlayev, who's 23-1, and Kamshaybek Kunkabayev, who's just 2-0. And it's for a title too, the vacant WBO Asia Pacific Cruiserweight title. That's ridiculous. For Kazakhstan. I don't even remember ever talking about a fight on here from Kazakhstan. Because we haven't seen one on ESPN Plus yet. Down in New Zealand, we have a decent fight card. Heavyweight Joseph Parker, 27-2, and Junior Fa, who's 19-0, looking for big number 20, win number 20 for the vacant World Boxing Organization Oriental Heavyweight title. Also, Cruiserweight co-main event, Nicholas Charalampous, who is 19-3, fighting Panuve Helu, who's 12-2-1. We haven't had a Jesus fight of the week yet, but we got a Julius. Julius Lloyd Long here. How about this record? 18-24 with one draw. Fighting Himi Ahio, who is 16-0. It's not quite the mismatch of the week, but pretty close. Alright, I know we got Canelo coming up somewhere here. Here's one also on ESPN Plus from London. Quaiz Kadimi, 8-0, fighting Ijaz Ahmed, who's 7-2 for the WBO European Super Flyweight title and the vacant IBF European Super Flyweight title. And the co-main event there is Nathan Heaney, 10-0, against Ryan Oliver, who's also 7-2 at middleweight. Tommy Fury is also on the card. I just found out he's only the half-brother of Tyson, Tommy. So, obviously, since he has the same last name, it must have been a different mother. So, he's 4-0 going into this one against TBA. We don't even know who he's fighting. I thought they were full brothers, but guess not. Here we go. Jesus, fight of the week! Holy crap, we got Jesus versus Jesus. Not even joking. In Los Angeles, California, you get to watch it on Fox if they televise it. The big Jesus fight. The Jesus fight to end all Jesus fights. Welterweights. Jesus Alejandro Ramos, 14-0, fighting Jesus Emilio Bojorquez, who is 24-2. Who's going to win? Jesus. Also on this card, Anthony Durrell, 33-2-1, fighting Kyrone Davis, who's 15-2. In the co-main event, Michael Rivera, 19-0 as well. Just like the guy we talked about a few minutes ago. Fighting Anthony Mercado Reces, who is 13-4. And we got the Jesus fight. Then we got super welterweights Leon Lawson III, 13-0 against Ramal Amanov, who's 16-2. We got Vito Mielnicki Jr. also on this card, 7-0 as a pro, starting off strong, fighting No Alejandro Lopez, who's 10-3-1.
Yeah, Mielnicki's a young kid, but he's definitely got talent and potential.
All right. And Saul Alvarez, otherwise known as Canelo, he is 54-1-2. The one being the Floyd Mayweather fight. He's fighting Abney Yildirim, who's 21-2. That's for the WBC World Super Middleweight title and the WBA Super World Super Middleweight title. So, not somebody that's a world beater, obviously. Not somebody that's going to probably challenge him too much, but he's got to fight somebody. And
Yeah, I mean, he's been dormant for 15 months now, since... No, I'm lying to you. He did have a fight after the, I was like, did he fight since the, Kovalev fight? I said, no, he didn't. Went distance, looked very sharp. So now, he's got the potential for Billy Joe Saunders coming up, and, chance, to, keep busy. As a fighter he should beat impressively. Keep himself in people's mind, bring in a payday, and then we'll see how May progresses. I mean, so I think this fight's more down in Florida.
Miami, Florida.
You know what? It was funny. Like they came out and said, this fight's in Miami, Florida, because we want to bring Canelo to more places across the country. We want more visibility. But you look at the last two places he fought. I think he fought down in, was it Texas, like San Antonio, which has a heavy Mexican pop back a few months ago. And then, I think December, like 18th maybe, and now he's fighting in Miami. Both of those are more, available to have live attendance. So, I think it was when he had the fight in Texas, and I don't know what the attendance will be down in Miami, but Florida is more lax with its attendance rules than a place like Las Vegas is right now.
Right.
Well, Las Vegas, you leave the floor of the casino you're supposed to be on, you're done. You're out.
Yeah. No thanks. Makes me wonder how the Fertittas with their Red Rock resorts are actually making money right now. Their stock is going up. It blows my mind because they have half of their casinos closed right now, and they have no plans to reopen them.
You know what?
But I did find some good news in my alerts today. I got Google alerts for station casinos, and 2 people hit jackpots. One of them off a 20-cent bet on one of the slot machines. And he got like $100,000. And the next guy, like the same day, got an $88,000 jackpot. So, good for them.
With how we are progressing right now, and I will say that word, progressing. And I do see the potential return to normalcy, hopefully sooner than later. I was talking to a friend of mine about probably 2 weeks ago, and in the airport, him and his wife, flying out to the Canelo Danny Jacobs fight a couple years ago. And then we got talking, and we're friends, and we're Facebook friends, and we chat every so often. And I said, what do you think with regards to potentially, in May? I mean, do you think it's a possibility? And he said, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I'm thinking no. And I said, why? And he goes, we're only, 2.5 months away, and, we're getting better, but I don't think we're going to be there yet. And I said, okay, that's a fair enough answer. And that's why, people questions to fight with them. I've asked people questions because I want their responses, whether it's a response I agree with or not. Like, I see stuff that people write on social media where they just want to be argumentative, and, and if they don't like what you say, they call you names, and they want to say bad things about you that they'll never say. So I told him, I said, I think we have a potential for a fight out in Vegas with at least a, attendance. And if maybe they go to the T-Mobile Arena, which has 20-some thousand seats, and knock it down to about 1,000, okay, or go to the Raiders' new stadium in Vegas, which has 70,000 seats, and knock it down to about 20,000, which would get you almost the same attendance you would get at the T-Mobile Arena, just spaced out. So, that's my thought process. And because I work in an industry that does a lot with healthcare, I read every day where we're progressing. Now, my dad got his second vaccination today. My mom goes next week. And every day I'm seeing across the country, we're getting a million. And I think a lot of it was done politically, where they held things back to, look bad and make Biden look good. Whether that's the truth or not, that's none of my business. All I want right now is people to be healthy, and where we can go back to a sense of normalcy. Now, in 2 weeks from tomorrow, I am flying to Clarissa, and, there's going to be, that's a stadium that seats about 10 to 11,000. They're allowing 22. And last week when the tickets went on sale, I knew if I didn't get them immediately, I'd be price gouged. I'd be paying a lot of money because people are going to buy tickets and then upsell.
Just don't get on one of them planes with the exploding engines. Did you see that? Did you see that footage?
No. You know what? I don't like to fly. Oh, dick. You
They landed it. I
And
mean, it was
that time I had to fly out.
it was a 2-engine airplane.
Oh, that's good.
But one of the
time I had to,
engines caught fire, and it was like a fractured fan blade that caused it. But
Jesus Christ, thanks.
pieces were raining all over the ground.
I was flying out to Reno to fight your boy Brian Kerr in his cement head, and get out there. We're flying out of Penn State. We're getting on a prop plane. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, we got to fly this down to Dulles. It's only about an hour. So then we, a jet out to Frisco and then into Reno. I don't want to get on this prop plane. This thing has propellers. Oh, I don't want on this thing.
I flew on one of those out of
bouncing all around.
Burlington.
And Bill Rabel's saying to me, he goes, I think we're going down. I'm clenched onto them handles. Knuckles were white. I lost 4 pounds on that flight.
Oh, my God.
Left Lock Haven, I was 182. I weighed in at I think 177 and a half.
Did you puke?
But I got my seats. Yeah, I got my seats for the games. And, in 2 weeks I'll be flying down there, and I'm going to cross my fingers, and I've got a special face mask that I'll be wearing. Vistaprint gave me a hard time about it. Vistaprint, I designed this face mask. It looks like the image you're using is a licensed image of somebody famous. And you need written permission from them to use that image. And I looked at the image on there, and I'm like, well, it's definitely an image of somebody. I wouldn't call them famous, but it's also an image of myself. So if you want permission from me to use my own face on a mask,
Yeah.
I give you permission. They're like, I actually called them. I said, I ordered this mask, and they're saying there's possibly a licensed image. They're like, yeah, we're looking at these masks you designed. It has a person, and one has a pair of boxing gloves, and the one has whatever. I said, well, that person you think is a licensed person is me. It's not like I'm trying to put a key or Elmer Fudd on there or somebody. I tried to make a shirt one time on Vistaprint with Elmer Fudd, and they told me no. And I tried to make one with Rocky one time, and they told me no. That's why I said those 2 names. But I said, this one, I don't have Warner Brothers to Elmer Fudd's permission, and I don't have Sylvester Stallone's permission. But I sure as hell have my own permission to use my own face. Thank you.
All right. Well, we got a couple more fights on
You guys
this
think I'm brain damaged.
Canelo card to talk about. There's a heavyweight fight on the card. It's pretty interesting. Zhilei Big Bang Zhang with a Z. Z-H-A-N-G. He's originally from China, but he's only had 4 fights in China. He fights out of Bloomfield, New Jersey. And he's actually fought in the city I went to high school in, Quincy, Massachusetts. Fought Galen Brown there back in 2016. Beat the pants off him. He's only had 5 fights and going the distance. 17 knockouts, 22 wins, no losses. He's fighting a guy named Jerry Forrest, who's only 26-4. So he's got some pretty decent fighters on his resume. Andrei Rudenko beat him by unanimous decision in 2019. He was 32-4 at the time. Devin Vargas was his last opponent. 22-6 was his record, and he got knocked out in Hollywood, the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. I said Galen Brown already. Nobody too crazy. Not a lot of other big names there. But. Then we have a guy named Pacheco, who's 10-0. I don't know if he's related to the old Ferdy Pacheco, the old trainer there, but he's 10-0, so he must have some good trainers. I also have a Jesus fighting TBA. And maybe they're hoping Jesus will just perform a miracle and make his opponent appear before him. Alright, so I think that's it. Diego Pacheco. He's a super middleweight. He's fighting Rodolfo Gomez Jr., who's 14-4-1, by the way. And that's it for fights and stories and all the like. Oh, wait. We do have one more story about boxing. Clarissa Shields is back in the news this week. Not only she wants equal billing for the female fighters, she also wants equal time, literally. She wants to be fighting the same amount of time as men. She thinks that needs to change. I didn't realize that was still in effect. So female fighters fight 2-minute rounds still? Is that what she's talking about?
Yes, that as far as I know, yes.
Yeah. She says, I think the biggest thing in women's boxing is people say women shouldn't get paid the same because we don't fight the same amount of time. But I wish more people will realize that we didn't put those rules in place. The men did. So the men need to change those rules to where every world champion boxer for women can fight 3-minute, 12 rounds. Shields said the issue affects women's boxing as a whole. And she said, we don't have as many knockouts as the men because we don't have enough time to get the knockouts. Of course, she's speaking from a lot of experience. She's got pretty much every belt there is to have, for the majors anyway, and she's 25 years old. But she's got a fight coming up against Marie-Eve Decaire at the Dort Federal Event Center in Flint, Michigan. And that's Decaire is Canada's IBF and WBA champion. And she says, we all know what we're signing up for, so no need to try to protect the women. If you're not going to protect the men because they're getting knocked out, they're getting hurt, and they are actually dying. The WBC said, when asked for comment, that scientific studies showed female boxers were more likely to suffer concussions than men, and that was why their fights were over a shorter time. So this is a line right out of Hollywood. It's science, not sexism, that demands we uphold this decision. Females have been shown to have increased susceptibility, symptom scores, and prolonged symptoms compared to males, the WBC said in a statement. Of course, they don't cite any actual study. They're just saying that. Sadly, most women athletes in all sports earn less than the men do. We are working on this by creating campaigns and joining forces with organizations in many arenas, not just boxing. Well, there you go. So it's not sexism, it's science. Next time you get accused of being a sexist, just say that. Just invent some science. All right, till next week. That's all she wrote. And I'm going to work really hard to get a guest.
All right, guys.
Been slacking on that.
I'll send you guys some good stuff.
All righty.
Sounds good.
All right, later.
Good night, fellas.